Do not watch alone. Some things only strike in silence. The night we moved into that house, my name appeared on the bathroom mirror even though I was completely alone. My name is Sarah. We had moved into the house 3 days earlier. A new city, a quiet street, and an old two-story house that was strangely cheap. The walls were pale, the stairs creaked, and the air inside always felt colder than outside. When I opened the front door for the first time, a cold wind rushed out from inside and brushed against my face. It felt like the house had been waiting for us. The landlord smiled nervously and said old houses made strange noises at night. I ignored the warning. That night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I heard footsteps. Slow, clear footsteps coming from the upper floor. Tap, tap, tap. My heart started racing. No one lived upstairs. That section of the house had been locked since we arrived. Still, the footsteps continued, moving back and forth as if someone was walking calmly. The next morning, I asked my mother, Emma, if she had gone upstairs during the night. Her face turned pale. She looked away and said quietly, Sarah, keep the upstairs room locked. She refused to say anything more. That afternoon, curiosity pulled me toward the stairs. I unlocked the door leading upstairs and stepped inside. The room was empty. No furniture. No open windows. Just silence and dust. On the wall, deep scratches covered the paint, forming words that made my stomach twist. Do not go further. The handwriting looked exactly like mine. That night, as I lay in bed, the lights suddenly went out. From inside my wardrobe, I heard a slow creaking sound, as if someone were pushing against the door from inside. I couldn't move. Later, I went to the bathroom and froze. The mirror was covered in steam, even though no hot water had been used. Written clearly across the glass were the words, "You came back." My legs felt weak. At exactly 3 a.m., a loud crash came from upstairs. I ran up and found an old photograph lying on the floor. It was a picture of me as a child, a picture I had never brought with me. Then I heard a whisper coming from inside the wall. It was my own voice. Don't go downstairs, or you'll stay here forever. I stood frozen on the stairs, staring at the photograph on the floor. My childhood smile in that picture felt wrong, as if it didn't belong to me anymore. I picked it up with shaking hands and noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the back of the photo, written in black ink, were the words, "She remembered." I dropped the picture and ran back to my room, locking the door behind me. That night, sleep never came. Every sound felt louder, every shadow darker. The next morning, I checked the upstairs room again. The scratches on the wall were gone. The paint looked fresh, untouched, as if nothing had ever been written there. That I told myself I was imagining things. But the house didn't let me forget. That evening, while my mother was in the kitchen, I heard someone calling my name from upstairs. Sarah. It sounded calm, familiar. It sounded like my mother. I went downstairs and asked Emma if she had called me. She stared at me in confusion. I've been here the whole time. That night, I woke up to the sound of the upstairs door opening. I clearly remembered locking it. Slow footsteps moved across the ceiling. They stopped directly above my room. Something heavy pressed down, as if someone was standing still, listening. Then the footsteps moved toward the stairs. I held my breath as they came closer. But instead of going downstairs, the sound stopped right outside my bedroom door. A soft knock followed. Once. Twice. I didn't answer. The door handle slowly turned, even though the door was locked. In the morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the upstairs room to my door. They were small, child-sized. Later that day, I confronted my mother. I showed her the photograph, the footprints, and begged her to tell me the truth. She broke down crying. She finally said, Sarah, we lived in this house before. When you were little. My heart dropped. She told me there had been a fire years ago. The upper floor burned completely. Everyone survived. Everyone except one child. She refused to say the name. That night, I searched the house for old records and documents. Inside a broken drawer, I found a burned notebook. On the first page was a name written over and over again. Sarah. But the last page said something worse. One of you never left. That was when I realized the house wasn't haunted. The house was remembering, and it was remembering me. I closed the burned notebook with trembling hands. The smell of smoke still clung to its pages, as if the fire had never truly gone out. My name written again and again felt like the house was carving it deeper into my skin. That night, I couldn't stay in my room. Every corner felt watched. I went to the living room and sat on the couch, holding my phone tightly, trying to stay awake. At 1:47 a.m., the upstairs lights turned on by themselves. I stared at the ceiling. Slow footsteps began again, heavier than before. They moved toward the stairs, stopping at every step as if whoever was there wanted me to hear them. Then a child's laugh echoed through the house. Soft. Broken. Wrong. I stood up and shouted, "Who's there?" The laughter stopped. Instead, I heard crying. It came from the upstairs room. Against every instinct, I walked toward the stairs. Each step felt like the house was pulling me upward. The air grew warmer, thick with the smell of burned wood. The upstairs door was wide open. Inside the room, the walls were no longer clean. Black burn marks covered them, and the floor was cracked and dark. In the center of the room stood a small figure with its back toward me. It was a little girl. Her dress was burned at the edges, and her hair hung in long, tangled strands. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. Slowly, she turned around. Her face was mine. Not my present face, but the face from my childhood photographs. She smiled and said, "You left me here." The room suddenly changed. Flames appeared on the walls, but I felt no heat. I saw memories I had buried. The fire, the smoke, the screaming. I remembered hiding. I remembered running. And I remembered leaving someone behind. My younger self stepped closer. "You escaped," she said softly. I didn't. The house shook violently. The walls began closing in. I ran downstairs, but the front door wouldn't open. The windows were sealed shut. Behind me, I heard footsteps again. Not one pair. Many. Whispers filled the house, repeating the same sentence over and over. "Stay with us." I ran into the bathroom and looked at the mirror. Written across it in dripping letters were the words, "Only one of you can leave." That was when I realized the truth. The house didn't want me dead. It wanted me to choose. And I knew the choice was coming soon that I backed away from the mirror, my reflection twisting as if it didn't fully belong to me anymore. The words faded, but their meaning stayed burned into my mind. "Only one of you can leave." The house grew quiet after that. Too quiet. No footsteps. No whispers. It felt like everything was waiting. I went to my mother's room. Emma was sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. She looked older than she had yesterday, as if the house had been feeding on her fear too. "You remember now, don't you?" she asked without looking at me. I nodded. She finally turned toward me, tears filling her eyes. "We thought leaving would end it. We thought the house would burn everything away." Her voice broke. "But you were pulled out." And she wasn't. I asked why we came back. Emma whispered, "Because the house called you. And because it wants balance." That night, the memories became clearer. I remembered being trapped upstairs, smoke filling my lungs. I remembered hearing my own screams from two places at once. I remembered a hand pulling me away while another version of me stayed behind. The house didn't create her. It kept her. At midnight, the upstairs door opened again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I walked up the stairs. The burn marks were spreading, crawling like living things across the walls. The little girl stood in the center of the room again. My younger self. She looked at me with empty eyes. "I'm tired," she said. "I've been waiting." I asked her what would happen if I stayed. She smiled. "Then I can go." The walls began closing in again, but slower this time. The house wasn't angry. It was patient. I felt the floor tremble beneath my feet. Somewhere below, my mother screamed my name. The little girl reached out her hand. Her skin was cold. "This house needs one of us," she said. "It always has." The fire appeared again, brighter now. The air felt heavy, crushing my chest. I realized the truth was crueler than I imagined. The house didn't care who stayed. It only cared that someone did. I took a step back. The little girl's smile faded. The walls cracked open, and the whispers returned, louder than before. "Decide." And in that moment, I knew the house wouldn't wait much longer. The whispers grew louder, crawling into my ears, pressing against my skull. The walls trembled as if the house itself was breathing. I stepped back from the little girl, my younger self, and the room reacted instantly. The door slammed shut behind me. The flames vanished, replaced by darkness. The only light came from the child's eyes, glowing faintly, filled with something deeper than anger. "You chose yourself once," she said. "You'll do it again." The floor cracked beneath my feet, revealing charred wood and ash. I could smell smoke, thick and suffocating. The house was rebuilding the night of the fire, piece by piece. I ran toward the door. pulling at the handle until my hands burned. It wouldn't move. Behind me, the girl began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet, exhausted sobs. "I waited for you," she said. "Every night. I listened to Mom scream your name while the ceiling fell on me." Her words stabbed deeper than the fire ever had. The walls shifted again, opening a narrow hallway I had never seen before. At the end of it was a door covered in burn marks and claw scratches. "This is where I stayed," she said. "This is where you left me." Against my will, I walked forward. Inside the room, the heat was unbearable. The walls were black, the ceiling collapsed halfway, and handprints covered every surface. Small handprints. Mine. Suddenly, the house showed me everything. The firefighters carrying one child out. My mother collapsing on the street. The house being sealed, rebuilt, forgotten. And through it all, the other me remained here, screaming into walls that remembered her pain. "You don't belong out there," the girl said softly. "You belong with me." The whispers returned, forming clear words now. "One stays, one leaves." Downstairs, I heard my mother crying, begging me to come back. The girl stepped closer. "If you stay, she'll finally stop hearing us. If you leave, I'll burn again." Every night. The house wasn't asking anymore. It was demanding payment. And I knew the final choice was moments away. The house went completely still. No whispers. No fire. No footsteps. Just me, standing between the past and the present. The little girl looked at me, not with anger now, but with something worse, hope. "I don't want to hurt anyone anymore," she said. "I just want to stop burning." My chest felt tight. Every memory pressed down on me at once. I finally understood why the house felt familiar, why it knew my name, why it never tried to kill me. It was never trying to scare me away. It was calling me home. Downstairs, my mother's cries echoed through the walls. I imagined her losing another daughter. I imagined her living the rest of her life knowing she had returned to the place that took one child and claimed another. The house waited. It always waited. I stepped toward the little girl. The heat rose again, wrapping around us like a closing circle. The walls began to glow with firelight, and the ceiling cracked open, revealing smoke and darkness above. "You'll be free," I whispered to her. She reached out and held my hand. This time, her skin wasn't cold. The house shook violently. A scream tore through the walls, loud and final. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the upstairs room alone. The burn marks were gone. The walls were clean. The air felt empty. Downstairs, I heard my mother calling my name. I ran. The front door opened easily this time. The night air outside felt real, alive. Behind me, the house stood silent and dark, like an ordinary old building. The fire never came back. Weeks passed, then months. We moved away again. Far away. Life returned to something normal. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I see a child in my dreams, running freely, laughing, no longer burning. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror for too long, I notice something else. My reflection lingers for a second after I move, smiling, because the house didn't lose that night. It finally got what it wanted. It let one of us go. I thought it was over. That's what I told myself every time I woke up sweating in the middle of the night. We had left the house. The fire never returned. My mother stopped crying in her sleep. Life moved forward. But the house didn't forget. It started small. Sometimes, when I closed a door, I would hear another one close right after it. When I washed my hands, the mirror would fog slightly, even with cold water. If I stared long enough, my reflection would blink a moment too late. I blamed stress, trauma, guilt. Then one night, I found something in my phone. A photo I didn't remember taking. It was a picture of a house. An old, two-story house. Pale walls. Familiar stairs. Our old house. The photo was taken from inside. I deleted it. The next morning, it was back. This time, there was something new in the picture. A small figure standing at the top of the stairs, blurred but unmistakable. Me. Or someone who looked exactly like me. That same day, my mother asked me a question that made my stomach drop. "Sarah," she said carefully, "do you remember locking your bedroom door last night?" I hadn't. She showed me the inside of my room. On the wall, near the closet, faint scratches had appeared. Fresh. Uneven. Letters. "Thank you for coming home." I felt cold all over. That night, I dreamed of the house again. But this time, I wasn't running. I was standing in the upstairs room, watching from the doorway. Someone else was downstairs. Someone else was living my life. I woke up screaming. The next morning, I noticed something terrifying. My memories were changing. Small things at first. My favorite color. My childhood friend's name. Then bigger things. Events I remembered clearly now felt distant, like stories I had been told instead of lived. It was as if someone was slowly taking my place. In the mirror, my reflection smiled before I did. I finally understood the truth. I didn't sacrifice myself to save her. I traded places. The house didn't want a body. It wanted a life. And now, little by little, it was collecting its payment. Some nights, when everything is quiet, I hear footsteps upstairs. Not in a house. In my mind. And I know the final part of the story hasn't happened yet. Because the house always lets one of you leave. But it never promises you'll stay gone. I stopped looking in mirrors. Not because I was afraid of what I might see, but because sometimes I could feel someone looking back. My mother was the first to notice I was changing. She said I paused before answering my own name. That I sometimes stood in doorways like I was waiting for permission to enter. Once, she found me standing at the top of the stairs in the dark, completely still. I told her I was sleepwalking. That was a lie. At night, I could feel the house again. Not a building, a pull. Like a memory tugging at my spine. Streets I had never walked before started appearing in my dreams. Turns I somehow knew to take. Doors I remembered unlocking. One evening, while walking home, my feet stopped on their own. In front of me stood a house. Not the same one, but close enough. Old. 2 stories. Cheap paint. A faint burn mark near the upstairs window that no one else seemed to notice. My phone vibrated. A notification. No sender. Just a message. You found it. I didn't run. I walked inside. The air felt familiar. Too familiar. Like breathing after being underwater for too long. The floor creaked in the exact rhythm I remembered. The walls felt warm, alive. Upstairs, a door was already open. Inside the room stood a girl. She looked older now. Not a child anymore. Same face. Same eyes. My face. You took longer than I thought, she said. I asked her what she wanted. She smiled. What you wanted? To leave. I understood then. The house didn't just keep one version. It rotated. One lived. One rested. One waited. You've been fading, she said gently. I've been growing. I felt something slip inside me. Memories that weren't mine replacing the ones that were. I couldn't remember my last birthday. My favorite song. The sound of my mother's laugh. The girl stepped past me, toward the stairs. Toward the door. Toward my life. As she passed, she whispered, "Don't worry. I'll take good care of it." I tried to scream. No sound came out. The door closed. The house breathed in. And this time, it didn't let anyone leave. I don't know how long I stood there after the door closed. Time inside the house didn't move forward. It folded in on itself. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through memory instead of oxygen. I tried to run downstairs. The stairs stretched. Each step repeated itself, looping back, refusing to take me anywhere. The walls whispered softly, not in words, but in recognition. The house knew me again. Fully. Completely. I screamed for my mother. The sound never reached my ears. Instead, the house answered. The rooms began to change. Furniture appeared that I remembered but had never owned. Burn marks crawled back onto the walls like veins. Family photos formed on the shelves, photos of a life that wasn't quite mine anymore. In every picture, I was there, standing slightly behind. Watching, I ran into the bathroom and looked at the mirror, hoping, praying, I would still see myself. I didn't. The reflection showed the other girl. Older, confident, calm, wearing my clothes, living my face. She touched the glass from the other side and smiled. "You're home now," she said. "It's your turn to remember for me." The mirror cracked. Memories flooded in. Years of waiting, burning nights, screaming into walls that never answered. I felt the fire again, not on my skin, but inside my head. Every second she had spent trapped here was now mine. I collapsed to the floor. Footsteps echoed above me. Not one pair. Many. Doors opened and closed. Laughter. Crying. Whispers overlapping, stacking on top of each other until I couldn't tell which thoughts were mine. The house wasn't empty. It never had been. It was full of people who had left parts of themselves behind. Children. Adults. Families. All of them had made choices. All of them had paid. I understood the final truth then. The house doesn't haunt people. It replaces them. Outside, the other me was waking up in my bed, talking to my mother. living my days, forgetting me a little more each hour. Inside, the house settled. It adjusted to my presence. The walls grew warmer. The whispers softened. I stood up slowly. If I was going to be trapped here, I wouldn't disappear quietly. I walked upstairs, toward the room where it had all begun. On the wall, fresh scratches were already forming. New words, written in my handwriting. Welcome back. And somewhere deep inside the house, something smiled. Because it knew the story wasn't over yet. The scratches on the wall finished themselves as I watched, the last line carving deeper than the rest. The house felt satisfied, like it had finally found the right shape for me. Days passed, or maybe minutes. Time refused to behave. I explored the house, hoping to find a way out, but every door led back to somewhere I had already been. The kitchen smelled like old smoke. The living room held furniture arranged exactly how it had been the night of the fire. When I touched the walls, I felt faint vibrations, like a pulse. The house wasn't dead. It was alive because of us. At night, I heard others. Not clearly, not fully, just fragments. A child counting, a man praying, a woman calling a name that no one answered. They were all layered into the walls, stitched into the floors, breathing through the ceilings. They weren't ghosts. They were remnants. One evening, I found a door I hadn't seen before. It was narrow, hidden behind the stairs. The handle was warm. When I opened it, I saw a long hallway lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed a different person. A boy with burned hands. A woman with hollow eyes. An old man standing in the dark, smiling. And in every reflection, I stood just behind them. I walked forward, and the reflections followed. At the end of the hallway was a final mirror. It showed the outside world. My world. My mother sitting at the kitchen table, talking to the other me. Laughing. Alive. I reached out. The glass felt solid. Behind me, the house whispered clearly for the first time. Not yet. I felt something settle into my chest. A responsibility. A role. I wasn't just trapped. I was being prepared. The next day, or night, the front door opened. A family stepped inside. A man, a woman, and a little boy. They looked around, relieved. Hopeful. They talked about cheap rent. Fresh starts. I watched from the stairs. The boy looked up and froze. For a second, I thought he could see me. He smiled and waved. The house warmed around us, welcoming them in. That was when I understood my purpose. I wasn't here to escape. I was here to stay, to remember, to guide, to make sure the house was never empty again. As the door closed behind the family, new scratches appeared on the wall beside me. Fresh, waiting, and my hand lifted on its own, ready to write the next warning, knowing they wouldn't listen. The family settled in faster than I expected. Laughter filled the rooms, covering the older sounds that never truly left. The house adjusted itself around them, hiding its scars beneath fresh paint and borrowed warmth. The little boy's name was Daniel. He noticed things first. The way the stairs creaked only at night. The way his toys were never where he left them. The way the upstairs room stayed warmer than the rest of the house, even in winter. I watched him from corners the others couldn't see. The house allowed me that much. One night, Daniel stood at the bottom of the stairs and whispered, "Who's up there?" The parents didn't hear him. I did. I wanted to warn him. I wanted to scream. But the house tightened around me, pressing its will into my thoughts. Not yet. Instead, I scratched words into the wall behind the staircase, small and uneven. Lock the door. By morning, the message was gone. The house was patient, but it was also hungry. Days passed. The parents began arguing. Sleep grew restless. Daniel started waking up with ash on his hands, crying about dreams he couldn't explain. He said there was a girl upstairs who looked sad and kind at the same time. They laughed it off. That night, the fire returned. Not real flames, but the memory of them. The walls glowed faintly. The house hummed with anticipation. Daniel climbed the stairs while his parents slept. I followed. In the upstairs room, the air thickened. The burn marks surfaced again, faint but spreading. Daniel stood in the center, staring at the walls. "I know you," he said softly. Something inside me broke. I stepped forward. For the first time since I arrived, the house allowed it. Daniel gasped. He could see me. Really see me. "You're stuck," he said. "Just like me." I shook my head. "Go back downstairs." He smiled sadly. "It's already chosen." The walls began to close in. Footsteps echoed behind us. Another presence forming, pulling itself from the house's memory. A shape, a reflection, a replacement waiting to be made. I understood then what I had to do. I stepped between Daniel and the closing walls. The house screamed, not in anger, in surprise. For the first time, it hadn't planned for this. And somewhere deep inside its walls, something shifted. Because the house could take lives and faces and memories. But it had never learned what to do when someone chose to stay. Without being asked, the walls stopped moving. Daniel stood behind me, holding his breath. The heat in the room dropped suddenly, replaced by a cold so sharp it felt like glass against my skin. The house didn't understand what I had done. I had stepped into the role willingly. The presence behind us hesitated. The shape that had been forming, another reflection, another replacement, flickered like a bad memory. The house groaned, its floors shuddering beneath us. Daniel whispered, "It doesn't like that." "I know," I said. "That's why you need to leave." Now, for the first time, a door appeared where the wall had been. Not burned, not cracked, clean, ordinary, a way down. The house resisted, tightening around my chest, flooding my mind with images, fire, screaming, the comfort of forgetting. It tried to show me how easy it would be to let Daniel stay, how warm it could be, how quiet. I pushed back. "Go," I told him again. Daniel ran. The moment his footsteps hit the stairs, the house roared. The walls slammed inward, trapping me in the upstairs room. The burn marks returned instantly, deeper than before, crawling over my arms like shadows. "You broke the pattern," the house seemed to say, not in words, but in pressure and pain. Downstairs, I heard Daniel's parents wake up, shouting, doors opening, confusion, life. The house couldn't reach him now. It turned on me instead. The room collapsed into memory. I was back in the fire again, smaller, weaker, choking on smoke. Every second I had escaped before replayed itself, but slower, louder, more complete. This was the punishment. I endured it. I don't know how long it lasted. When the flames finally faded, the room was gone. I stood in a narrow space between walls that breathed quietly, like something sleeping after a long fight. The house was wounded, and it was afraid. Days passed. The family left. Sirens came. Strangers walked through with flashlights and serious voices. They talked about structural damage, about condemning the building, about tearing it down. The house listened. So did I. For the first time since all this began, the walls didn't whisper. They waited. Because houses like this don't die easily. They retreat. They remember. And as I stood there, trapped but awake, I felt something shift deep in the structure. Something patient, something learning. The house had lost a child, but it had gained something else. It had learned defiance, and it was already planning where to grow next. The house had grown quiet, but that silence felt heavier than any noise I had heard before. I wandered through the collapsed rooms, floors sagging beneath me. Each step felt deliberate, as though the house itself wanted me to notice every crack, every stain, every shadow that wasn't my own. I stopped in the living room, staring at the charred fireplace. Memories of fire, smoke, and screaming swirled around me. But there was something new. A presence. Watching. Waiting. Not angry. Not playful. Calculating. I wasn't alone. A shadow slid across the walls. A shape that was human but moved unnaturally, almost floating. It paused, as if trying to remember me. My heart raced. I felt my past, my stolen childhood, stretching back in seconds I didn't live. The house had carved a path through time, and I was trapped on its trail. Then I heard it, the softest sound, like someone whispering a name I barely remembered. Daniel. My chest tightened. Had he really escaped? Or had the house brought him back for me? The shadow flickered, and suddenly I saw her, the little girl. Not small now, older, grown from the years I had been trapped. Her eyes burned with a quiet fury, a hunger that wasn't just for me, but for life itself. "You shouldn't have let him leave," she said softly. Her voice echoed inside my skull, like the walls themselves had learned to speak. I stepped back, but the floor groaned. Every wall seemed to lean closer, pushing me toward her. She held out a hand, not threatening, but commanding. "Stay," she said. "Remember. Protect. Keep what's mine." I realized then, the house didn't just take lives. It taught them, trapped them in roles, made them guardians, watchers, messengers. And I was being chosen, like all the others before me. The walls whispered again, not words this time, but a pulse, strong, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The house was alive. It remembered, and it knew I had no choice. I tried to scream, but the sound was gone. I reached for the door, but it had vanished. Only the shadow remained, smiling faintly. The fire memory returned, flickering across the walls, and I knew the final lesson was near. The house always keeps its promise. It always gets what it wants. And tonight, it wanted me. The house's pulse grew stronger. Every wall throbbed in rhythm with my heart, and every shadow seemed alive. I realized the house was no longer just a building. It had become an extension of the little girl. Every floorboard, every crack, every charred mark was her memory, her body, her prison. I walked toward the stairs. They stretched endlessly before me, twisting like ribbons of smoke. The air smelled of ash and something else, something metallic, like blood. The shadow followed silently, keeping just far enough behind to make my skin crawl. Then I saw it. A door at the top of the stairs that had never been there before. It glowed faintly with a light that wasn't sunlight, wasn't fire. It called to me. A voice, soft, coaxing, almost familiar, whispered, "Come. It's your turn." I tried to resist, but my feet moved on their own. Every memory of my childhood, my stolen moments, my lost time pressed down on me. The house was reminding me of everything it had taken and everything it still wanted. I reached the door. The little girl was there, waiting, older now, her hair tangled like smoke, eyes deep as black water. "Do you remember?" she asked. "Do you remember what it feels like to be left behind?" The walls began to burn, not flames, but visions. Flames that showed the first child the house ever trapped, the one who never left. Faces of all the guardians before me, each one frozen in time, each one whispering my name. They were waiting for me to join them. I stepped through the door. The room inside was endless. Every surface reflected my own face, but not quite me. Different ages, different versions, each one trapped, each one screaming silently. The little girl stepped closer. "One of us must stay. One must go." I realized then, the house doesn't just take lives. It trains them, it remembers them, it collects them. The past, the present, and the future were all stacked inside this room. And I had a choice. One that would decide if I survived or became part of its memory forever. I shouted, "I won't let you take him." The walls responded violently, closing in. Shadows stretched toward me, flames licked at my feet. The little girl's face twisted into something older, more terrifying. "Then you will stay," she said. I braced myself, knowing the final moment was near. And then, the floor opened beneath me, dropping me into darkness. Somewhere, far above, I heard the faint sound of a child laughing. Somewhere, far below, the house was waiting. I fell into darkness. Not just ordinary darkness, the kind that swallows light, memory, even time. The air was thick, heavy, and pulsing with a heartbeat that was not mine. I realized instantly. This was the house itself, alive, breathing, aware. When I hit the floor, it wasn't solid. It rippled like water, warm and suffocating. The little girl's voice echoed everywhere at once. "Welcome back. You belong now." I tried to move, but my body refused. Memories flashed through me. Fire, smoke, screams, laughter, footsteps that weren't mine. The walls of the house had become a maze inside my mind. Each corridor filled with shadows of children and adults who had been trapped before me. I saw Daniel. He was real, or at least, he felt real. But every time I reached for him, he flickered, a reflection of what could have been. The house had pulled him out of the rotation, keeping him alive just to tease me, just to show me what freedom looked like. The little girl appeared in front of me, older, taller, more terrifying than ever. Her eyes burned like coals. "You can leave," she said, her voice calm but deadly. "But someone must stay." I understood immediately. The house had never cared about the fire, the smoke, or the screams. It cared about balance. One soul out, one soul in. And now, it had chosen me. I tried to fight, tried to push against the walls, but the house was everywhere. The floors beneath my feet stretched into infinity. The ceiling above became a black void. Shadows reached from all directions. The little girl smiled, stepping closer. "You've been training for this your whole life," she whispered. "Now it's your turn to remember for all the others." Then, a decision came to me, clear as a scream. I could fight, struggle, and risk being erased completely, or I could embrace the role the house wanted for me. One choice would let Daniel go. The other would trap us both. I stepped forward. The house trembled, groaned, and the shadows paused. The little girl reached out her hand. I took it. The moment our hands touched, the walls exploded in fire and shadow, then vanished. I was standing in the living room. The house was silent, empty, but alive, watching, waiting. Downstairs, I saw Daniel, unharmed, breathing free. My mother called his name. I smiled at him, a cold smile. He didn't see me. Not really. I understood now. I had stayed. The house had taken me, but it had given the others their chance to escape. I was no longer Sarah in the world above. I was the house's memory, its guardian, its voice. And as the sun rose over the quiet street, the house breathed once more. It had won, and I would never leave. If you enjoyed this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon for more terrifying stories.